Hello, beautiful people of the internet. How are you doing today? My name is Jackie and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today in this video, I'm going to be talking about the books that I read in the month of November 2021. In the month of November, I only read 4 books for a total of 1,411 pages. This was the least productive reading month I've had so far in 2021. And considering there's only 1 month left in the year, it probably will be the least productive reading month. It happens. I just wasn't as in a mood to read this month. I read 4 books on my TBR, but I did not read 4 Dead Queens. Also, I'm still rereading Hamnet for my in real life book club, and I need to finish that ASAP because I'm filming this video on the 5th and my book club meeting is the 7th. So I need to finish rereading that, like, today. But, you know, it happens. I'm not going to force myself to read something that I don't want to read, and we'll just talk about the books that I did manage to finish in the month of November. First up, at the beginning of November, I read One by One by Ruth Ware, and I gave this book 3 stars. I thought it was okay, but it really didn't live up to some of the hype this book received when it first came out. Personally, I've never loved Ruth Ware as much as other people on BookTube do. I gave 2 of her books 4 stars, but she's not a favorite author of mine personally. I might check out more of her books in the future if she publishes a book that sounds particularly interesting to me. This book is a closed circle murder mystery that takes place at a ski chalet in France? I think it was France. Basically, the employees of this fictional social media app called Snoop are all going to the ski chalet on a corporate retreat, but while they are there in this remote chalet, suspicious deaths begin to happen, which at first I think might be tragic accidents, but then they realize, no, somebody here is killing us off one by one. And in this book, we follow the perspectives of 2 characters. We have Liz, who is an ex-Snoop employee that has come along on this trip, and also, my God, I've forgotten her name. Erin. Erin. God. Ugh. Erin is the other perspective, and she works at this ski chalet with her coworker Danny. God, I just had a total... could not remember her name for a second, but this book to me was, as you can possibly tell, not that memorable. I didn't think it was bad. However, I think my biggest issue with this book is I feel like the pacing was really off. The first 30% of the book, I was really waiting for something to happen because the first character doesn't die until the 30% mark of the book. But then once the first character dies, the book gets much more exciting. The next 45% I was really enjoying. I loved the claustrophobic atmosphere of all these characters being snowed in together. I was really anxious to know what was going to happen next, who else was going to die. Then, at the 75% mark of this book, the killer is revealed. And at first, when this reveal happened, I was like, surely that's not it. Surely another twist is coming, because who reveals the whodunit when there's still a significant portion of the book left? But no, that was it. That was the reveal. There was no other twist, and God, the ending just went on for way too long. After that reveal, the 75% mark, the rest of the book was really boring. I saw some people on Goodreads who didn't like this book say that they predicted the killer from the moment that character was introduced. Personally, I never suspected that character. I do think that in retrospect, I don't know if everything this character did made complete sense considering that they're the mastermind. Like, I feel like some of the characters' thoughts and feelings, like, I don't feel like that's how they would have actually acted if it was them all along. That didn't really make sense to me. But, you know, I think this could have been an interesting reveal that I would have been surprised by had the pacing not lessened its impact. Because this reveal came unceremoniously so early on in the book. At first, I really didn't believe that this was actually the reveal. And then when I finally realized, no, this is it, I was kind of just like, oh, well, that's a little underwhelming. Overall, just very mixed feelings. I think this book had a slow beginning. The middle 45% was really good. And then the last quarter was just so incredibly dull, and I was ready for the book to be over. I think, all in all, 3 stars is about what it deserves. Next up, I read The Mysterious Affair at Styles by Agatha Christie. I wasn't entirely sure what to rate this. I ended up deciding to give it a 3.5 star. I enjoyed this book while I was reading it. However, I was a little underwhelmed by some aspects of it, and I think part of the reason why I didn't love this that much is because the reveal in this book was spoiled for me. I was listening to an Agatha Christie related podcast that was discussing Death on the Nile, and I didn't realize that they were going to spoil other Agatha Christie books without a spoiler warning in that podcast. So I ended up hearing a spoiler about this book before I could hit pause. And unfortunately, I did see the reveal coming because this podcast told me a big NASA spoiler. And it's my own fault, because if I had read the podcast reviews before I listened to it, I would have seen a bunch of other people all complaining about the exact same thing. So let this be a lesson that it's really important to read the reviews first. This is a murder mystery set at an English estate where the wealthy Emily Inglethorpe has just been murdered, and it is the very first in the Hercule Poirot mystery series. I definitely want to read this entire series, and I'm going to start trying to go in a semi-chronological order. You don't have to read them all in order, but I figured that since I personally want to read all the Poirot mysteries, I might as well start at number 1 and then continue reading straight through to hit all the ones that I haven't read yet. This book is narrated by Poirot's friend Hastings, and I know a lot of people say they find Hastings annoying, but personally, I actually found him hilarious. Basically, Hastings is useless in this investigation. He really doesn't contribute anything, but I laughed quite a few times because Hastings thinks he's contributing so much more to this team than he actually is. At one point, he's kind of like, yeah, Poirot is so lucky that he has me because he's really old and he's not as sharp as I am, and I just had quite a few laughs at Hastings' expense. I wish I had his levels of just self-confidence. Personally, I didn't love the reveal of who the murderer was. Partially, yes, because it was unfortunately spoiled for me, and that's obviously not the book's fault. But to be honest, I feel like even if I hadn't been spoiled, I wouldn't have loved the reveal, because this book uses a Agatha Christie trope that I personally am not a huge fan of. I will say, though, there was an extra layer to the ending that I wasn't aware of, so I was actually surprised by that part, and that was good. I did enjoy that little added element of surprise. Overall, while I did not love this one, and it was a little bit disappointing in some aspects, I still really like reading Agatha Christie's books. They're quick to get through, fun to read, and have really nice, cozy British mystery vibes. Speaking of, next I read Magpie Murders by Anthony Horowitz. I was recommended this book in real life by an independent bookstore owner that I got chatting to one day, and I have to tell you, I enjoyed this book a lot more than I actually thought I was going to. I ended up giving it 4.5 stars. The main character of this book is an editor named Susan Ryland, and Susan is the editor for this author named Alan Conway. Alan Conway is a mystery writer who has written a very successful series of British mystery novels following a detective named Atticus Pund, and the Atticus Pund series is basically like the Hercule Poirot series. It follows a detective who is originally a foreigner that comes to England and solves crimes in little cozy British settings. So if you like Agatha Christie or other Golden Age mystery writers, this book really is a tribute to them and their work in certain ways. The way that this book is written is so innovative. Basically, the beginning of the book is the Atticus Pond manuscript that Susan is editing. So you read through this story within the story, and then Susan gets to the end of the manuscript and she realizes it's missing the ending. And so now we are back into the present timeline following Susan as she tries to figure out where is the end of this book and what happened to Alan Conway. Then eventually at the end, the rest of the Atticus Pond book is completed. It's just a super interesting book format. It was super cool to have this story within the story, and if Anthony Horowitz wanted to publish all of the Atticus Pond mysteries, I would read them. I don't remember if I totally predicted the ending or not, but overall, I think this book gave me exactly what I wanted from it, and I really enjoyed it. If you like Agatha Christie and her contemporaries, definitely I think you would like this book too. Finally, I read The House of Medici, Its Rise and Fall by Christopher Hibbert. I ended up giving this 4 stars. I think this was a really well done nonfiction about the Medici family, and if you're someone who doesn't know much about the Medicis, doesn't know much about Renaissance Florence, I think that he explains this time period and what's going on in a way that's very easy to understand. Personally, some of the things that he was talking about in this book were things that I already knew, though obviously that's not Christopher Hibbert's fault. I mean, this year I took a class in college on the Renaissance and Reformation. I watched the Medici TV series, which got me to do a lot of research on my own time. And even in the class that I took on the Shelleys and the Brownings earlier this year, I read poetries the Brownings wrote inspired by the Medicis, because when they lived in Florence, they lived across the street from the old Medici palace. So just based off of the other research that I've done so far this year, he was telling me things that I already knew, but obviously that's not his fault. I think what this book would be really good for is if you're someone who's interested in this time period, interested in this family, but doesn't really know where to begin, I think that this book would be a good book for you to read, and then the particular people or events that interest you, you can then go research that more in depth. I think that Hibbert's writing was very accessible, very well researched, and I think even if you knew nothing about the Renaissance, you would still be able to follow this book pretty well. I do wish that he'd included a family tree, because so many of the Medicis were named Lorenzo, Cosimo, Giovanni, things like that. It can get a little hard sometimes to remember who is who in your head, so a family tree I think would have been nice. I know I will definitely be trying to find some other Medici books that I can read in the future about the particular people or events that interest me the most. This family was so interesting. They wielded so much influence in the Renaissance. They were closely connected with very famous artists like Da Vinci and Michelangelo. And these people are basically the perfect family for a epic historical drama, because their lives were so turbulent. They were exiled, they were assassinated, there were conspiracies against them sometimes, they even murdered each other. I mean, no wonder they made a TV series about these guys, because there's just so much material to work with. I do wish this book was longer. It is only a little over 300 pages. Basically, the first 100 pages mostly talk about Cosimo the Elder. Then the next 100 pages mostly talk about his grandson, Lorenzo the Magnificent. Then the last 100 pages are discussing basically 250 years of family history. So I do wish that last section had been longer because I really wanted to hear more about the people who were ruling the family in this time period, and I would have liked more detail, which is why I say I think this would be a great starting point for your research, and then you can try to find other books that discuss a particular person in much more depth. I will say though, I enjoyed reading this book. I think it was well done, and if you're interested in learning more about the Medici family or the Renaissance in Florence, I definitely think this book would be helpful for you to read. So everyone, those are the books that I read in the month of November. Have you read any of these books? If so, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comment section. My social media links are down below if you want to follow me on Tumblr, Instagram, or be my friend on Goodreads. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope you have a pleasant rest of your day. Bye, and I'll see you next time.